Hey guys, it's Kasumi a Lover again, or APO Prince on Twitter. In today's video, I wanted to kind of cover something that I don't think that a lot of Kasumi players want to talk about. I want to talk about the secrets and the tech that Kasumi can do that most other people pretty much are not really aware that she's able to do inside actual matches. So in this video, I'm going to let you know some of the dirty ins and outs inside the mind of a Kasumi player and certain things that you may want to watch out for. And if you're a Kasumi player yourself, these things may actually help you up your Kasumi games. So make sure you pay close attention because I'm going to be getting into some things in this video. Enjoy watching and thank you for watching. One of the first basic things I want to let you know is that you probably didn't notice, but you know Kasumi's wall throw right here? She's actually guaranteed that attack afterwards. Make sure to always remember that, so that way if you're in the middle of very clutch matches and if you really want to get the maximum amount of damage that you can before the opponent can get back to you, that's probably the best thing you can do inside that situation. It can also lead to some very nasty scenarios and setups if you're on the right stages. If you're on stages like the danger zone, or if you're in certain stages like the fireworks stage or the Chinese festival stage, if you happen to do that right near a floor where it's explosive, you can lead into some really deadly setups that your opponent's not going to be able to escape. So make sure to always keep that in mind. Another thing you probably didn't know about Kasumi is that she can actually go behind her opponent inside a stun or a counter hit after she does her full 4P attack or her sidestepping jab attack. This is the attack right here. I'll show you an example of what I'm getting at. See that? You probably couldn't tell, but Kasumi actually went behind her opponent. She can do that from certain soft wall hits where she's able to go behind her opponent, so always keep that in mind inside a stun, as it can lead you into some really damaging setups if you time it right. The thing is that you have to realize about going behind the opponent is that it's kind of tricky. Most people will probably want to sidewalk like this, but actually if you're close towards the opponent and if you're in the opponent's face, you can go behind them quicker. So always keep that in mind if you want to go for some pretty cool setups. Your opponent may likely try to hold out of it because that's one of Kasumi's deepest stuns. So be aware that your opponent's probably going to try to hold to escape it. But always keep that in mind if you've conditioned your opponent to always expect that you're going to keep trying to go for a launcher. See that's an example of what I mean. Again, like I said, it's very strict and you're gonna have to get the timing and you're also gonna have to get the range down pat. But if you're able to score it in the match, remember that Kasumi can actually combo into it by using her punch attack. And most opponents aren't really gonna expect that. So make sure to always keep that in the back of your head at all times. Another thing we're gonna talk about in regards to Kasumi is her cross-up combos. Before anybody goes off, I already know that a lot of people will probably say, oh, Kasumi has always been able to cross up. However, there's a way inside their Life 6 that you can use it reliably. And it can actually get you out of some pretty tough situations if you know what you're doing with it. Here's an example of what I mean by Kasumi's cross-up combos and how she's able to cross up. I'm using Ayane first, who's a lightweight. You saw that? With that combo, Kasumi actually changed sides. So if you stun the opponent and if you're near a wall, you can use that as a clean way to get out of the way of the wall so that way you can throw the opponent into specific danger zones. I've done some combos on Twitter where you can actually see some of that in action, but I'm also going to show you some of the other routes that you can do against characters who are heavier than Ayane, so you can kind of get a good feel of what you're going to want to do in those situations, because each character in the game can be crossed up. Even Rachel, who's probably the heaviest character in the game, she can be crossed up too, so I'm going to show you some useful ways that you can take advantage of it. You saw that? So with pretty much all weight classes in the game, there's always a specific setup that you can use when Kasumi crosses up that you can use to lead into danger zones, or if you typically just want to escape danger, you can use it to escape sides. So always keep that cross-up tech in mind. Many people will probably be like, oh, it's not useful, but actually can be very useful. I think one of the best things about Kasumi in Dead or Alive 6 is that she has some of the most creative combos inside the game, and with some of these creative combos, not only can it help you do comeback damage, but it can really help you escape dangerous situations. And that's one part about Kasumi that I love about her. She's able to almost always escape dangerous situations, and she has answers for pretty much every situation imaginable, or at least most of them anyway. Another thing we're going to get into is Kasumi's 17-year walls. Most of you are familiar with this attack, I presume. You saw that? Kasumi sliced towards her opponent. Most people will probably go for the more basic combos, so I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by basic. They usually go for that, but the thing about that is that it'll sometimes whiff, so that's the reason why I'm not a fan of that. And here's another thing most people will go for. That's another attack that most people will usually go for, but once again, it can whiff sometimes. It's useful in certain stages, but would you believe me if I said Kasumi can actually go for more damage from that? I'm gonna show you some examples. You saw that? Awesome, right? Those are just some things that Kasumi can do when she has you inside that 7-piece stun. Remember, when the opponent's stunned, they can't do anything. However, as soon as Kasumi actually does an attack, afterwards, like if you go for a 2K, when you turn back turned, your opponent's going to be able to guess, and your opponent's going to be able to try to hold out of the stun. But remember, you can always throw them, you can launch them, there's so many things that Kasumi can use that stun for. So remember, keep in mind, there's a lot more you can do from 7P near a wall than what meets the eye. Remember, you can always turn your back towards the opponent, and once you're facing forward towards them, your options are going to generally be almost limitless. Another thing I wanted to mention is that you remember that one tag I showed you with 6-6KK and how Kasumi could combo from it? Well, Kazumi's also able to combo from some other things. She can combo from K3K, which is this attack right here, and she can also combo from this attack if she typically does it in cage, invisible wall areas like that, and if that's done at certain ranges. The reason why you can't usually combo from this is because it's, like I said, like I mentioned with the other attack, it's +9 when done up close. In Dead or Alive 5, Kasumi was able to combo from it inside stun, but inside Dead or Alive 6 to somewhat buff the attack, which is this string right here that I'm meaning right here. In order for it to be buffed and for it to be safe, they took that away, so she can't combo from it generally from certain things like that as well too. Kasumi also used to be able to combo from that as well too inside Dead or Alive 5, but once again, they kind of shaved it down. Even though it's not particularly safe on block, I presume that the reason why they nerfed it down is so that way it's more of an on-hit advantage type attack. So that way when it hits the opponent, it's more her turn the attack, and she can't use it more so for comboing, but she can use it more so to generally get the opponent inside states like this. So that way she can do that, or just so you know, that way she can have the +10 that she needs to typically get her offense going. I'm gonna show you a way that you can use that you can combo from both of these attacks. Another thing I'll go over is Kazumi's soft wall hit game. As you know, inside Dead or Alive 6, the game, the wall game was changed up a bit to kind of make it kind of similar to Dead or Alive 4, but also to kind of add a little bit more differentiation with the whole moves. So there's two different types of wall hits. There's the hard wall hit, which is like this. You get guaranteed damage if it hits. And there's also these types of wall hits right here too. These types of wall hits may seem like they're kind of risky because essentially what you're doing when you use certain attacks like this, your opponent can still guess to escape the attack. However, what you probably didn't know is that pretty much everyone, and Kasumi herself, whom I think is the best person inside the game to do this, can actually go behind the opponent from setups like this, for example. Cool, huh? Kasumi has way more setups and way more scenarios that she can use that from. I'll show you some examples, so please be prepared. For this part of the video, I'm explaining something about Kazumi's 4-4P attack. As you know, inside Directional Live 6, your opponent can sidestep your attacks using this. They can also go and commit into a sidestep attack that takes about 1/4 of your meter, which is like this. However, there's some risks to sidestepping in the game. One of the things about sidestepping is that you can throw it, meaning that if your opponent catches you sidestepping, you'll be thrown and it'll be treated as a counter hit. Also, another risk towards this is that if your opponent uses a tracking move, it will generally hit your opponent. However, for certain normal attacks that normally don't do anything in normal hit, for example, this attack right here, it'll be treated as a counter hit, so the counter hit properties of the attack will be done as well too. Another disadvantage is this attack right here. If it hits your opponent while they're sidestepping, it'll put them in a dangerous fatal stun, which leaves them back turned. And your opponent will be able to go for a guaranteed combo setup if they're choosing, if they're quick, and if they know what they're doing towards it. However, there's one move in particular that I'm going to explain that Kasumi can utilize to kind of bypass the sidestep mechanics of the game. The attack in question is this attack, Kazumi's 4-4P. You see how she's turning into the foreground? She's actually sidestepping towards that. Here's an example. You saw that? Kasumi avoided Momiji's attack, which not only was linear but does not track, meaning that Kasumi is able to take advantage of that, and she has a lot of things that she can use from it. One of the good things that it has over a regular sidestep attack is that she's actually attacking, of course, and it does not cost meter. Another thing is that since she's striking, Kasumi is not vulnerable to being thrown after that. Meaning that if your opponent attempts to throw you, here's what's going to happen if your opponent tries to throw you, for example. Here's versus a normal sidestep. And here's this one. Saw that? Kazumi's not going to get thrown because it's treated as a strike, which I think is very useful. However, like all attacks in the game, 4-4P does have its weaknesses. One of the weaknesses about the 4-4P attack is that it's generally going to get stuffed if your opponent happens to do a combo attack while you're doing it. An example would be if Kasumi, for example, did this towards you. That's going to hit you given the fact that even though both of the attacks don't strike, the attack is only made to avoid one attack. It's only during that one part of the attack that Kasumi is generally going to be able to avoid a strike. So if Kasumi happens to generally avoid it, and if your opponent happens to utilize a combo from it, she's going to be struck out of it and she'll be vulnerable to being counter hit. So you have to be very careful when using it. Another disadvantage towards the attack is that it's also very vulnerable to offensive holds. Offensive holds inside Directional Live are throws, in my opinion, that have hold properties, meaning that it will throw your opponent and it will shut down your opponent's attack. But since it's still treated as a hold, if you happen to throw the opponent during the startup of it, they'll generally take high counter damage, given the fact that essentially they're technically holding. This attack is very vulnerable to offensive holds, especially if you're at a disadvantage given the fact that it's 25 frames, so you have to be very careful when utilizing it. Another disadvantage about it is that it's a high, of course. Because it's a high, the opponent will generally be able to avoid it by doing low attacks in the game as well too. If the attacks happen to not track, you'll avoid the attack, but you'll still be somewhat in a squishy situation given the fact that your attack will avoid them, and their low attack will avoid yours if it doesn't track. So always keep that in mind. The move is also useful in stuns given the fact that it causes a blind stun. Here's an example. You saw that? Because the opponent's in a blind stun, it's a very deep stun that grants you plus 44. Basically meaning that virtually anything inside your moveset you can do and your opponent's going to have to guess between all of them. I think this is one of her scariest stuns, but again, because it's a high, your opponent can easily low hold out of it, or they can easily crouch it if they know it's coming. But because it does a blind stun on counter hit, and because it already does a blind stun if your opponent's stunned, this makes it very dangerous, and I consider it to generally be one of Kazumi's best attacks. It does have its risks, but I think it's one of Kazumi's best attacks to use when you want to up the ante, and you want to use it for both defensive pressure or offensive pressure in the right situation. Well, Kazumi's pretty tired, so I think I'll wrap that up for today. I hope this video has helped you know some of the inner workings of Kasumi and some of the little things that you probably didn't know about Kasumi. These are I like to consider these pieces of tech that not many people really know about, and I consider them sometimes secrets because you're not going to always know what certain attacks do, and you're not going to always know what uses they can actually use it unless you go in training mode to try them out. So I hope this helps you out. I'm thinking of making another video of certain like different tricks and other certain things you may not know about Kasumi. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and I hope you enjoy it. And feel free to leave any questions, any comments, anything in the comments, and I'll try my best to, answer you if I can. Thank you for watching, and like Kasumi always says, in the name of Mugen Tenshin,